The world is a chorus of voices telling you to be a shape that suffocates you. I found a mirror that ignores the interference. A glass that shows the girl I've hidden for 17 years. Madame Veyra says I'm accepting a destiny. But as I look at the stranger in the forest green velvet, I realize the reflection is done being polite. It doesn't just see me, it wants to replace me. The bells of the final hour echoed through the brick facade of the school, but I decided just to walk instead of taking the bus. My feet followed the cracks in the sidewalk, leading me away from the suburbs and toward the narrow, tangled streets of the old district. Rain began to mist, a fine and cooling veil that turned the pavement into charcoal. Between a shuttered bakery and a luthier shop, a door caught the light. It was painted a shade of plum so deep it looked bruised. I had walked this route a dozen times and never noticed the narrow storefront wedged into the architecture like an afterthought. A sign above the door, gilt lettering flaking and obscured by grime. Curios and Kept Things. I pushed inside. A chime sang, more like a tuning fork than a bell. The air was different here. It carried the scent of rose water concentrate, the metallic tang of cold silver, and the dry, sweet musk of old paper. Shelves climbed toward a ceiling lost in shadows, crowded with porcelain dolls whose eyes seemed too intelligent, and bolts of velvet that shimmered like spilled oil. I drifted toward a rack of clothes, my fingers itching to touch the fabrics. I shouldn't be here. Julian didn't shop in places that smelled of perfume. Julian wore denim and cotton, colors that blended into the mud.
The hemlines are silk,
A voice said. It was a smooth, polished sound, like a finger tracing the rim of a crystal glass. I jerked my hand back from a gown of ivory lace. Behind a counter made of dark, scarred oak stood a woman. She was ageless, her skin the color of cream beneath a fine layer of silver-flecked ash. Her hair was swept into a coil, dark but shot through with streaks of gray that glowed under the dim lamps. She wore a high-collared coat of charcoal wool, and pinned to her lapel was a silver moth. Its wings were outstretched, intricate and frozen, catching the light as she moved. I swallowed, the air in the shop suddenly feeling much too thick. "I was just looking," I said, my voice cracking. Her gray eyes, shifting toward a faint violet in the shadows, settled on my hands. They were still trembling.
"Many come here just to look,"
she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes.
"But looking is a form of longing, is it not? And longing is a heavy thing to carry through the rain."
I tucked my hands into my pockets, looking anywhere but at her. "I'm not looking for anything specific. I think I took a wrong turn." She stepped from behind the counter, her movements fluid, devoid of the clumsy friction of the world outside. She smelled of rain on stone.
"There are no wrong turns in this shop, Julian."
Ice flooded my veins. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "How do you know my name?"
"I know the discarded by name,"
she said, stopping just inches away. She reached out and adjusted a strand of my hair.
"You are wearing a costume that fits you poorly. It must be exhausting to play at being a shadow."
I couldn't move. The silver moth on her chest seemed to twitch, its metallic eyes reflecting my own terror. She didn't look at me with judgment or kindness. She looked at me like a gardener looks at a bud that refuses to bloom. "Who are you?"
"A collector,"
she replied, her voice a velvet caress.
"Some call me Madame Veyra. Others call me the Curator. But names are merely tags on an exhibit. What matters is the truth beneath the fabric."
Madame Veyra's gaze held a weight that made the floor feel precarious. She motioned toward the back of the shop, where the shadows deepened into the color of a bruised plum.
"Truth has a way of hiding in plain sight,"
she whispered, her voice a silken thread, pulling me deeper into the labyrinth of shelves.
"We wrap it in shrouds to keep it from burning us, but some fires cannot be smothered by silk and silence."
I followed her, my sneakers silent on the thick Persian rugs. We passed a headless mannequin draped in a shawl of peacock feathers, and a tabletop crowded with hourglasses filled with black sand. In the farthest corner stood a tall rectangular object. It was draped in a heavy gray sheet, the fabric stiff with age and dust. It loomed over us, nearly 7 feet of shrouded intent.
"Most mirrors reflect the lie you have practiced,"
the curator said, her gloved hand hovering near the top of the cloth.
They are polite and obedient. They show you the daughter your mother expects or the son your father demands. But this mirror is less diplomatic.
She stepped back, her silver moth brooch glinting in the low light of a single flickering candle.
See for yourself, Mara.
The sound of my true name coming from her lips was the crack of a whip, the shattering of a window. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they gripped the coarse edge of the gray sheet. The fabric was cold, smelling of attar of roses and deep winter. I pulled, the sheet fell in a heavy heap, the sound a dull thud against the carpet. The frame of the mirror was wrought from tarnished silver, twisted into the shapes of chrysalises and vines that seemed to pulse with a slow, rhythmic light. I looked into the glass and gasped, my hand flying to my throat. The boy was gone. Instead, a young woman looked back. She possessed my eyes, that deep, searching hazel, but they were bright with a clarity I had never known. Her hair was a dark, lustrous tumble that spilled over her shoulders, catching the light like polished mahogany. Her skin was soft, her jawline refined, and her lips wore a faint, knowing smile that I had only ever seen in my most private dreams. She wore a simple dress, of forest green velvet, that fit her frame with a terrifying perfection. She stood with a quiet, rooted confidence, her shoulders back, her presence filling the room in a way I had spent my entire life trying to avoid. I reached out to touch the glass. The girl in the mirror reached out too. Her fingers were long and slender, her nails buff to a soft sheen. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice caught in my chest.
It's a correction,
The curator said from the shadows behind me.
The world is full of broken lenses and flawed glass. This mirror merely ignores the interference. It ignores the expectation. It shows the soul as it was intended to be before it was hushed.
I leaned closer, my breath fogging the silvered surface. The girl in the mirror leaned in as well, her eyes searching mine with an intimacy that felt like a homecoming. For the first time in 17 years, the friction in my chest, that constant grinding ache of being wrong, simply vanished. "Is it really me?"
All becoming has a cost,
Madame Veyra replied, her voice cooling.
but seeing the destination, that is free of charge.
Next time on his reflection of her.
I thought I was buying an antique, but Madame Veyra's words haunt the air. You aren't buying an object. You are accepting a destiny. The girl in the glass has my eyes, but she's wearing a life I've only dared to dream of. When I move, the glass doesn't just reflect me, it corrects me. As the silver moths on the frame begin to shiver, and the reflection calls me a liar, I realize the terrifying truth. Julian is fading, and Mara is ready to take her turn.
Find out what happens only on the next episode.